Hello, St. Albans and St. Thaddeus. I'm coming to you today from the sanctuary of St. Albans, where I've been working today, and I've been here in the sanctuary praying ever since I received the news that there is some chaos of folks who are breaking into the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., trying to disrupt the proceedings that are going on there today. I'm dismayed by this news, and I'm praying for you, and I'm wondering how that news is washing over you. My guess is that as this comes, there might be a little bit of fear and trepidation, but also anger. Anger has been pretty heavy for me. I'm angry that we haven't found a better way to listen to each other. I'm angry that our discourse has become so corrosive. I'm also angry that conspiracy theories seem to be peddling as truth. I'm angry that we don't have trust enough in each other to recognize that no matter who is elected, we belong to each other, and that God calls us into that, especially us Christians. And as I was praying, I remembered that today is the Feast of the Epiphany, which is a day we celebrate the revelation, the acknowledgement, the recognizing that Christ is born into the hearts of all those around us. Just not long ago, I think all churches from the many different walks in our tradition, our Christian tradition, celebrated the birth of Jesus. And that birth, as we all told, takes place in a very humble place, in a manger. That is, God decided to, in a humble way, break in on this human condition in a physical, true, real way. And this God with us message is at the core of our tradition. I'm reminded here in the season of the Epiphany of the story where Mother Teresa has a friend who's a nun, and they're in a conversation, and the nun has been visiting this person who's dying of tuberculosis. And the nun is very sad because the person dying of tuberculosis has remained bitter and angry and despondent. And the nun has visited him day after day, caring for him, loving him, hoping that he would profess the faith before he died. And he did not. He was bitter into the very end. And the nun was very sad about this. And Mother Teresa says to the nun, why are you so sad? And the nun says, well, when he gets to heaven, he will not know the face of Christ. And Mother Teresa says to the nun, of course he will, because Christ will have your face. I feel that in this moment, as we recognize the bitterness that has come into our communities in political division, that this division is encroaching upon some of the more sacred parts of our common life. Our families, our closest friendships, some distant friendships, our places of work and the halls of government, where relationships are beginning to break down. And I think we see that breakdown happening in D.C. now. And maybe, like me, you're wondering how can we respond to that? I sit here in the sanctuary under the dove of peace, reminded of stories of Jesus in which Peter drew his sword in anger, in political anger. And Christ, of course, told Peter that those who live by the sword will die by the sword. I think Christ is primarily a person who drives a message of showing up in relationship with people and finding pathways of peace. As I wonder about the violence that we are inspired to, I think about the violence in my own heart. And I think about the many people that are in my life who I have disagreements with, especially political disagreements. and the small violences that have been done between us, whether that's avoiding each other or right out break and division. There are many instances where folks who I'm related to, folks who I'm close friends with, folks who I'm distant friends with, I've in some ways avoided people who I work with. So what I feel inspired to do in this moment after praying on the Feast of Epiphany is to hope, and to make hope active by reaching out to those folks, and not reaching out to them with self-righteousness or a sense that that I'm standing from sort of some political platform, but instead just a message of connection and peace. And I want to invite you maybe to do the same. I invite you to stand firm in whatever political conviction that you have, but to reach out to the folks who you feel disconnected from, who you know you disagree with, who you are divided from, with an invitation of maybe a phone conversation, of coffee, a message of goodwill, of peace. And my hope is that this spiritual practice will inspire something. Maybe it will change absolutely nothing. I don't know. But we take risks on our spiritual practices. And the good spiritual practices are the ones that we do in the world that have real implications, real relational implications. As I look at what's going on in DC and I pray, I want to remind you that I'm inspired on this Epiphany feast to hope. And I think we have a lot to hope for. There are people of all racial backgrounds and languages and ideologies who have, in courageous and brilliant ways, contributed to the strength and foundation of our nation. And that I have faith and hope that we will pull through this divided time and that our institutions will remain strong. Because I believe that we belong to each other and that Christ is calling us on this Epiphany season, especially as Christians, to find each other. Know that I'm praying for you, that I'm praying for our elected leaders. Know that I'm praying for the people that I disagree with. I hope you will join me in prayer.